Have you ever been just, you know, staring into space, completely lost in thought, and then suddenly you think of someone, a really specific person?
And then, like, seconds later, your phone buzzes.
Exactly. And it's a text or a call from them. Or
Mm.
maybe you've had that intense, almost physical wave of emotion where you just knew what someone you loved was feeling, even if they were on the other side of the country.
We all tend to do that, don't we? Shrug it off. We call it a coincidence, maybe a cute little glitch in the
Or
universe.
synchronicity.
Right. But what if that glitch isn't a glitch at all? What if it's evidence of a deep, trainable, even necessary human sense that we've just let go dormant?
And that is the incredibly ambitious core idea of the material we're getting into today. We're essentially trying to pull the concept of telepathy out of the realm of, sci-fi and magic.
And put it firmly under a lens of structured, measurable practice, of disciplined effort.
It's fast.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've been analyzing this incredible guide that treats telepathy not as some rare mystical gift you're born with, but as a latent human sense, like sight or hearing.
Something that can be developed.
Systematically developed. The sources lay out this really clear, pragmatic program. It has measurable targets, specific mental exercises, and surprisingly, some very strict ethical guidelines.
And what really gives this material its unique flavor is the background of the person guiding us, the author, Prabadevi Venkatesan. She's not a traditional mystic or an academic researcher.
No, not at all. She's an engineering graduate.
Right. But she's also a multifaceted artist. Skilled in drawing, classical dance, writing.
And that dual background is just so critical. It grounds the whole thing. The engineer in her is demanding verifiable results, process refinement, rigorous repetition.
But the artist in her gets the symbolic, emotional, and intuitive language that thought actually uses.
It's the perfect blend.
It really is. And that blend of scientific rigor and creative application sets the tone for our entire deep dive. So our mission today is to give you a shortcut, a way to understand the how and the why behind conscious telepathic communication.
We're going to unpack the material's intense focus on preparation, on understanding the subtle energy of thought, and on adhering to those strict ethical codes.
All while using practices that could actually produce measurable results.
In short, we're going deep into the mechanics of a mind-to-mind connection.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Before we even get to the training, we need to build a foundation.
Mm-hmm.
We all use the word telepathy, but let's start with a solid clinical definition of what it actually is.
Right. Well, the term itself is pretty modern, actually. It was coined in the late 19th century by a classical scholar named Frederick Myers.
Myers, okay.
And he just combined two Greek words, tele, which means distant or far off.
And pathia, which I'm guessing means feeling or perception.
Exactly. So literally, it's distant perception.
And what does that mean in practice? How does it work?
Simply put, it's the direct, non-physical transfer of information. That could be thoughts, emotions, images, even just intentions from one mind to another.
And the key thing is that it's happening without the five senses.
That's the defining characteristic. No sight, no hearing, no touch, no electronics or mechanical devices. It just seems to leap across space, and it often feels instantaneous.
No whispering, no texting, no secret codes, just pure data jumping from one brain to another.
And for the author, this isn't just theory. She talks about this one incident with her twin sister, Lily, that it completely changed her perspective on what communication is.
Tell us about that.
She was at a cafe waiting for Lily, feeling totally calm. And then out of nowhere, this intense wave of stomach-dropping unease just swept through her. But crucially, it wasn't just a feeling. It was immediately followed by a vivid mental picture.
The specific image, not just general anxiety.
Exactly. She got a picture, clear as a photograph in her mind, of Lily's small blue car. It was stalled, parked sort of haphazardly next to a deep roadside ditch on a quiet, dusty country road.
A road that wasn't anywhere near the cafe.
Miles away, far outside the city. The feeling was distress, but the image was the data.
She didn't just feel worried. She received actionable intelligence, so to speak.
Precisely. The signal was so powerful, she actually stood up and started walking toward the parking lot without even thinking, just checking her watch. And right then, her phone rings.
It was Lily.
It was Lily, confirming her engine had died on some remote back road miles away, and her phone battery was almost dead. The whole thing just highlights the immediate high-fidelity nature of the connection.
A mind-to-mind whisper that bypassed every normal channel.
And delivered both emotion and visual context.
So while Myers coined the term in the 19th century, the actual phenomenon It seems to have ancient global roots. It predates Western science by a long shot.
Oh, for sure. It's this recurring thread woven all through human culture. In ancient Hindu texts, for instance, they talk about the siddhi, which is like a psychic power called manojavata,
Which means
the capacity to know another's mind. And it wasn't seen as a freak occurrence. It was considered a natural, though very challenging, spiritual achievement.
it's telling that they had a formal name and a classification for it all those centuries ago.
And it wasn't just in formal written traditions. You see it in indigenous cultures all over the world. There are rich oral histories, like among the Inuit in the Arctic, with stories of hunters sensing each other's decisions or emotional states across these vast snow-covered distances.
It's a globally observed
A
thing.
human capacity, yeah.
The modern Western scientific push seems to start later, though. Late 19th century, with groups trying to catalog these experiences. But the really famous attempts at lab testing, that's more 20th century.
Right. That's where parapsychology comes in, pioneered by J.B. Ryan at Duke University. He's famous for those card-guessing experiments.
With the Zener symbols.
Yes, the decks of 25 cards with 5 symbols: star, circle, square, waves, cross. Participants would try to guess the symbol on a card they couldn't see, often in another room.
And the results were always controversial. But statistically, they were interesting enough to keep the research going.
Correct. Over tens of thousands of trials, the average success rate was always just slightly above the 20% you'd expect from pure chance. But for certain high performers, the results were way outside of what could be considered random.
And that momentum even caught the attention of governments.
Definitely did. It eventually led to programs like the U.S. Stargate project, which started quietly in the 1970s.
And the goal there was very practical.
Oh, absolutely. They wanted to turn psychic research, including telepathy and remote viewing, into actionable intelligence. And while the program was eventually shut down, the very fact that a world power invested millions in the possibility, it just shows the perceived potential.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me, moving from history to theoretical physics.
Huh.
What's the science that could possibly underpin this? How can a thought travel without a physical medium?
You have to step into quantum theory, specifically the concept of the zero-point field.
Which we called cosmic Wi-Fi earlier. Let's dig into that a little deeper. What is it?
Well, the theory suggests it's this omnipresent, all-pervasive sea of subtle energy that fills all of space, even a perfect vacuum.
Okay.
And physicists like Hal Puthoff and Elizabeth Rasher, they've argued that if consciousness, which is this incredibly complex organization of particles, can interact with this fundamental field, then the field itself becomes the substrate for connection.
Yeah.
The mechanism is often linked to quantum non-locality.
That's the idea that two particles can be linked, and what happens to one instantaneously affects the other, no matter how far apart they are.
Exactly. So if two minds become coherent, they're essentially acting like two parts of the same underlying quantum system.
So the thought isn't traveling in the way a radio wave does.
No, it's more like the underlying field is excited instantaneously everywhere. A mind in London and a mind in Tokyo might interact as if they were side by side because they share the same fundamental reality. It bypasses the speed of light. It's just interconnectedness.
Wow. Okay, so moving from the cosmic down to the clinical,
Yeah.
let's talk about the experiments designed to measure this.
Yeah.
The Ganzfeld experiments are central to the modern argument, right?
They're essential. Developed in the 70s by people like Charles Honorton and William Broad, Ganzfeld is German for whole field.
And the whole point is to reduce sensory input, to quiet all that internal chatter.
Right, to create a kind of a blank mental canvas. The technique is very deliberate. Participants lie back. Their eyes are covered with halved ping pong balls.
Which creates that diffuse, featureless red light.
And they wear headphones playing steady white noise. You're basically confusing the normal senses so that subtler signals can surface.
And while the receiver is in this state, the sender, in another room, is looking at a random image and trying to project it.
Exactly. The receiver then has to choose the correct image from a set of 4. Pure chance would be 25%.
So what do they find?
Well, across dozens of independent labs, hundreds and hundreds of sessions, the hit rates consistently settled around 32%.
Which is statistically significant.
It is. But of course, that's where the controversy comes in.
Right, you have to address the criticism. What were the main arguments against the methodology?
Critics brought up some valid points. Things like potential sensory leakage, tiny hues getting between rooms, or the file drawer problem, where maybe only successful trials get published.
That's what skew the data.
It would, but subsequent meta-analyses, particularly by psychologists like Dean Radin and Daryl Bem, they addressed these things directly. They applied really strict criteria, they threw out studies with known flaws, pooled data from only the highest quality labs.
And after all that filtering,
The above chance results held up. That 32% figure was repeatedly reaffirmed as robust. As the statistician Jessica Utz once said, the evidence for psychic functioning is statistically stronger than the evidence for a lot of effects we widely accept in medicine and psychology.
and that data really reinforces the whole point of our source material here, if this has a measurable basis.
It can absolutely be developed. Success, according to these sources, isn't about luck. It's about motivation, a calm mind, a structured practice, and just honest, data-driven feedback on your own results.
So we tend to think of telepathy as just thought reading, but what the sources show is that it's actually a spectrum. There are different recognizable kinds of experiences. It's not this one single thing.
That's such a crucial insight. The author found that after teaching workshops for 2 decades, these experiences reliably fall into about 5 recognizable forms. And if you can understand these, you know what kind of signal you should even be looking for.
Okay, let's walk through them. Let's start with the most common one, which is empathic telepathy.
Right. Empathic telepathy is purely about emotion. You suddenly feel another person's mood, their joy, their sadness, as if it's your own. The emotional charge is the main event. The visuals or words are secondary, if they're there at all.
Like you're going about your day, you're perfectly happy, and then suddenly this wave of crushing sadness just hits you.
Exactly. And you're confused by it. And then minutes later, your friend texts to say their family dog just passed away. You didn't get a picture of the dog. You picked up on the sorrow itself.
I've had that happen, where the feeling is so strong and it's so clearly not mine, it doesn't match my situation at all. So, what's the next form?
Cognitive telepathy. This is different. This is about getting direct thoughts or specific words that just pop into your mind.
So it's verbal or conceptual.
Right. The sources give an example of someone thinking about their brother who's stationed overseas, and suddenly these clear, distinct sentences are just repeating in their head. I'm okay, don't worry. The mission is wrapping up.
And it feels different from your own inner voice.
Yes, the phrasing doesn't match your usual rambling inner monologue. It feels like an insertion, a clean signal.
Okay, so that's 2. Number 3 is sensory or image-based telepathy.
This is what happened to the author with her sister Lily in the car. You get these picture-like snapshots, almost like short mental video clips. It's very vivid, very visual. Another common example is a parent who sees this mental video of their toddler falling seconds before the daycare calls.
The brain is basically receiving a high bandwidth visual file. So what's number 4?
Number 4 takes us into sleep. Dream telepathy. When the conscious mind is offline, so to speak, messages can slip through the cracks of the subconscious.
The signal-to-noise ratio is better.
Much better. There's a really striking story from a workshop participant. She dreamed vividly that her sister, who lived 3 states away, was walking into a hospital maternity ward. And she distinctly saw the room number, 214, glowing above the door.
That is incredibly specific.
And it was accurate. The next morning, she called her mom and found out her sister had been admitted for early labor the night before. And yes, the room was 214. The dream state is just highly receptive.
Okay, and finally the most dramatic one. Crisis telepathy.
This is the one that generates the most compelling stories because it happens during life-threatening or highly urgent events. The sheer emotional force of the crisis seems to act like a massive power surge, just blasting the signal through any psychic noise.
The classic example being the soldier on patrol who senses his mother calling his name.
Exactly. And at that very hour, his mother, who has no idea he's in danger, feels this overwhelming need to pray for him.
Now, this is where a healthy skepticism has to come in. How did the sources differentiate that from just confirmation bias? You remember the one time it worked, but you forget the 1,000 times you worried and nothing happened.
That's an essential question. The guide addresses it by focusing on the uniqueness and the immediacy of the data. In what they call true crisis telepathy, the sensation has a distinct emotional watermark. It feels foreign, it feels immediate, and it often has specific details, like the car being by a ditch, not just stalled.
Details that separated from your own general anxiety.
Exactly. General anxiety is what the sources call psychic static. And the whole point of the structured practice, which we'll get into, is to train your mind to tell the difference.
So telepathy isn't always words. It has its own complex syntax. What does the language of thought actually look like?
It's definitely not English prose, it's a code. It's a blend of mental pictures, felt emotions, bodily sensations, and what the source calls conceptual packets.
Meaning dense clusters of information.
Right. And these thoughts, they essentially hitchhike on what are called embodied metaphors.
Okay, let's break that down. Embodied metaphors, what does that mean?
It's rooted in our shared human body. We all, across cultures, link upward motion with positivity. Things are looking up, he's high on life. And we link downward motion with negativity, feeling down, sinking into depression.
Because these come from fundamental experiences like gravity, posture.
Exactly. So if someone is sending you a message of deep joy, it might not register as the word joy. It might register as a feeling of rising, buoyant warmth in your chest. The body is the first receiver. It translates the signal into a physical cue.
And what about symbols? Like getting a picture of a key instead of the idea of opportunity.
Symbols are the compression system for this language. They travel faster because they're so dense with meaning, and they also bypass the left brain's tendency to overanalyze everything. They land right in your intuition. If you've ever remembered a dream, you already speak this symbolic language.
This is key. The idea that thought travels in these emotional packets and symbols, not full sentences, explains why you can pick up on the vibe of a message even if you miss the words.
And that leads us directly to the next part. If we're dealing with such subtle signals, any internal noise or agitation is going to completely wreck the clarity of the message.
Which means preparation is everything.
Yeah.
So this is where we shift from theory to actual disciplined practice. The sources are so clear on this. The foundational prep, the calm breathing, the sharp concentration, emotional balance, that stuff matters infinitely more than any supposed innate talent.
Preparation is the whole game. Without it, the sources warn you're trying to catch a whisper in a hurricane. I mean, the author says the #1 complaint in every workshop is always, my mind is too busy, I can't even sit still, let alone hear someone else's thoughts.
That's just the human condition in the 21st century, isn't it? Mental clutter.
It is. The author shares this story about Laura, a musician. Laura described her mind as a percussion section. Cymbals chasing snare drums, endless internal noise, no rest. Her inner monologue was just a constant barrage of deadlines, social media, rent worries.
An environment completely hostile to any subtle input.
Totally. So the prescribed remedy for her and for us is meditation. But it's really important to use the guide's specific definition here.
It's not about forcing your mind to be blank.
No, that's just a recipe for frustration. It's about the repeated, gentle training of the mind to return to a single focal point. The breath, a mantra, whatever works for you.
And what skill does that simple act of returning actually train?
It trains meta-awareness, the ability to notice your own thoughts without getting kidnapped by them. And as you practice that, the space between the thoughts gets wider. The clutter doesn't have to be forced out. It settles on its own, like mud in a glass of water. And that stillness is the ground you need.
This internal calm is also supported by your external environment. What makes a good practice space?
It has to feel safe, private, and sensory-friendly. Safety is huge because any sense of threat, even subconscious, activates the amygdala, floods you with cortisol, and narrows your perception. The total opposite of what you need.
And the sources had this great story about trying to do this in a New York City apartment.
Right, trying to deal with that urban chaos. Instead of fighting the sirens and the taxis, they focused on creating the small, soothing counter-environment. They used a little tabletop fountain for the sound of water and burned some sandalwood incense.
So they created a little bubble of calm.
Exactly. It was a ritual that signaled to the nervous system that despite the chaos outside, this internal moment was safe and focused.
So once you've handled the external noise, the internal chaos, our own emotional turbulence is the next, and maybe even bigger hurdle.
It's described as a powerful distorting field. It bends the signal like heat rising off asphalt bends light. The author learned this the hard way with the famous dishwashing argument anecdote.
Right.
She and her partner Emma had a heated argument. They called a truce, but the author's chest still felt tight and agitated. Her body was still holding on to that charge.
But they tried to practice anyway.
They did. The author tried to send this clear, bright image of a blue butterfly infused with calm energy. But Emma, the receiver, reported seeing a flapping, stuttering, sickly creature trapped behind glass.
Wow. So her own residual agitation completely contaminated the signal. The calm butterfly became this trapped, anxious thing.
It was a huge turning point. The takeaway was that you need genuine, authentic inner spaciousness before you even try to communicate. You need a clean inner environment.
Okay, let's get into the body, my bridge. Specifically, the breath. It's the most accessible tool we have.
The breath is like the tuning fork for the nervous system. A slow, deep inhalation, and just as important, a slow, deep exhalation that stimulates the vagus nerve.
And the vagus nerve is the main highway for our rest and digest mode.
Precisely. It signals to the brain that it's safe to calm down the stress response.
The sources detail a specific technique, the fourfold breath. What's the rhythm there?
It's simple but powerful. You inhale for a count of 4, you hold for 4, you exhale for 4, and you hold the breath out for 4. Repeating that for just a few minutes starts to lower the busy beta brain waves and increase theta waves.
And theta waves are critical for this work. Wow.
Theta waves are that bridge state. They're what you experience in deep meditation, REM sleep, hypnosis. They give you greater access to the subconscious, to intuition, all the information that's normally masked by the busy beta state. You're literally making your brain a better radio receiver.
And slow, deliberate movement can enhance this state too.
Yes. Practices like Tai Chi or Qigong, they sync your breath with movement, which leads to this heightened somatic awareness. The body becomes less of a distraction. The Santa Fe retreat story illustrates this perfectly.
What happened there?
After a morning of Qigong, the author felt this distinct, tingling, almost fluid envelope around her skin. Later, in a partner exercise, she correctly perceived the color orange, the exact color her partner was sending. Her body, already heightened, picked up the energetic signal before her brain could even interpret it.
So these foundational meditation practices are what train the actual cognitive circuits you need. The sources cover 3 main styles.
The first is seated stillness, or shamatha. This is all about continuous, stable focus on one thing, the breath, a candle flame.
And how does that help with telepathy?
It trains the stability you need for sending. If your mental image of a lighthouse is flickering and shifting because your attention keeps wandering, the signal you send out is going to be weak and incoherent. This builds cognitive stamina.
Okay, then there's open monitoring, or vipassana.
And this cultivates the receptive awareness you need for receiving. Instead of focusing on one point, you're watching the entire field of your experience, thoughts, sounds, feelings, without getting attached to any of it.
Which seems almost opposite of shamatha.
They're complementary. This wide-open, non-reactive stance is exactly what you need when you're waiting for an incoming impression. It trains you to notice those subtle, fleeting ripples and tell them apart from your own inner chatter.
And the third one, which feels like an emotional practice but is described as essential, loving-kindness meditation.
Metta, or loving-kindness, is structurally essential because it creates emotional resonance. Telepathy thrives on rapport. When you regularly practice radiating goodwill, you soften your own ego's defensive walls, which allows for a genuine, unguarded connection.
So it's not a soft skill, it's a technical requirement.
Absolutely. The story of Thomas the engineer proves it. He was a logical guy, very precise, but his impressions were always fuzzy. He lacked emotional permeability. It was only after he started practicing compassion for a specific difficult person that his accuracy just soared. Compassion creates the necessary resonance.
And building on that, you have to strengthen the imagination itself.
Visualization is the mental gymnastics here. You start with simple shapes, a red triangle, and just hold it steady for 30 seconds. This primes the parts of the brain that are active during both imagination and actual perception.
And then before we move on, let's just circle back to energy hygiene, keeping the circuit clean.
3 things: grounding, centering, and shielding. Grounding is about stabilizing your energy, imagining roots connecting you to the earth to prevent feeling spacey.
And centering.
That's about gathering your scattered attention back to your core, maybe your solar plexus or your heart. It helps you distinguish the sender's emotions from your own.
And shielding is like a filter.
A permeable filter, not a hard wall. You visualize a sphere of light around you that's programmed to only let in love-based or consent-based information. It just filters out the psychic noise and debris.
So we've built the foundation, but now we have to sustain that calm state against real-world chaos. This is about moving from basic calmness to what the sources call disciplined cognitive stamina.
Yes, and your famous or maybe infamous cafe experiment failure is the perfect illustration of why this is so necessary.
It was a total disaster. I was trying to send this image of a vibrant crimson rose from a busy downtown cafe, trying to practice that single-pointed awareness. The moment I closed my eyes, I was just bombarded. The hiss of the espresso machine, a spoon clanging, an argument about a parking ticket at the next table. It just shattered my focus. The crimson rose in my mind wilted, and my colleague just sketched a bunch of question marks.
And that became a classic example in the guide of why basic meditation isn't enough. You need that stamina, the ability to hold your focus against the tide. So what are the advanced techniques for building that resilience?
One is called the slow motion walk. You decide to walk, say, 20 paces, but you take 5 minutes to do it. You move so slowly that you become completely absorbed in the sensation of your feet on the ground, the micro shifts in your balance.
The detail becomes overwhelming in a good way.
Right.
And that hyperfocus strengthens the parts of your brain responsible for sustained attention, makes them less reactive.
Another one is single-task immersion, like mindful dishwashing.
Yeah, instead of scrubbing plates while you're planning your week, you just pay exquisite attention to the details. The warm water, the smell of the soap, the friction of the sponge. The goal is to notice faster and faster when your mind has been hijacked and then gently bring it back.
And all this training culminates in single-pointed awareness, which is crucial for launching a really powerful thought form.
This is where you achieve what the sources call identity fusion with the image you're sending. So for reassurance, the author often uses the image of a solid lighthouse against storm waves.
And you don't just see it, you immerse every sense you have in it.
Precisely. You feel the salty wind, the coarse texture of the stone, you hear the waves. You let the image expand until it fills your entire awareness, pushing out your own sense of self. You stop being the person visualizing the lighthouse.
And you become the lighthouse.
And in that moment of fusion, that's when you release the thought. It creates this incredibly coherent wave because you've bundled sensory data, emotion, and concept into one unified packet. It's just much more likely to land with precision.
Let's talk about adapting to chaos, cultivating inner silence when there is no actual silence.
The big insight here is that silence isn't the absence of sound. It's the internal absence of resistance to sound. The author talks about living next to the elevated train in Chicago. The noise was constant and jarring.
Which must have made any attempt at stillness impossible at first.
It did. But then she deliberately reframed it. She decided to treat every rumble of the train as a mindfulness bell. The second she heard it, she would relax her shoulders, take one deep breath, and just follow the sound as it passed. The trains went from being enemies to being allies, constantly reminding her to focus.
That's a powerful shift. So let's talk about mastery. Moving beyond simple images to layered messaging.
This is like playing double stops on a violin. You're weaving concept, emotion, and intention into a single transmission.
Can you give an example of how those layers would stack?
Sure. If you're sending a message to a struggling colleague, you might choose the concept of a key, but you infuse it with the emotion of excitement and the explicit intention to unlock opportunity. It's a much richer signal, less likely to be misinterpreted.
And telepathic scripting takes that even further.
That's where you transmit an entire sequence, like a short story. You have to anchor it around a central thread. You send the first scene and say it's a closed door, and then you have to pause. The key is you have to wait for that subtle sense that the receiver has absorbed it. Only then do you send the next part, like the door opening. It's the ultimate test of cognitive control.
Okay, we've built the foundation, developed the focus. Now it's time for deliberate action. Let's start with sending simple, measurable thoughts, the smallest package. The source lays out a very clear, three-step transmission process.
This is the practical engine. Step 1 is gathering. You condense the thought. You visualize your mind like a cup filling with bright light that contains the image, the emotion, the whole package.
And once that's gathered and coherent, step 2 is projecting.
Right. You feel the subtle internal forward movement. As you exhale slowly, you let that sphere of light stream towards the person, like setting a paper boat on a brook. And the guide is so clear, it cannot be forced. Pushing just makes a mess.
That distinction between effortless release and a strained push seems vital.
It's the difference between resonance and noise. And then step 3, which is maybe the hardest for beginners, is releasing.
You have to trust the process.
Implicitly. The message has left the harbor. You have to consciously resist the urge to analyze it or worry if it arrived. Doubt is like yanking on the fishing line. It just ruins the whole thing.
And to make this measurable, to get beyond just anecdotes, the author uses the flashcard method.
Simple, recognizable images. Cat, tree, cup. In one story, the author's partner was sending 10 simple images. The author, as the receiver, got 5 of them right: star, cup, cloud, key, and shoe.
When the chance rate was only 10%.
Exactly, a 50% success rate in that trial. That statistical jump is the data point that tells you the mechanism is actually working.
So let's flip it. Let's talk about receiving. This is often described as the harder skill. What's the main challenge?
The core challenge is telling the difference between the subtle emotional watermark of a foreign thought and your own internal chatter. Every person has a unique energetic signature, a specific flavor. You have to learn to recognize when a feeling lands in your chest that doesn't have your signature on it.
So how do you train that delicate distinction?
The guide recommends the empty field meditation. You visualize your mind as a vast sunlit meadow. You set the intention, I am open to receiving, and then you just sit and listen. You watch for the subtle ripples on the surface of the meadow.
You're cultivating a hypersensitive baseline.
You are, and the body is often the first to know. The case of Carlos the student is perfect. Carlos was adamant he wasn't receiving anything, but he admitted that his chest would tighten and his palms would sweat at random times.
And those physical responses correlated with the transmissions.
Perfectly. When he started noting them down, they lined up exactly with the times his partner was sending images related to her extreme fear of public speaking. His body registered her anxiety long before his conscious mind did. The body is the most honest receiver.
So let's broaden this out. How does this integrate into everyday life and relationships?
When it's integrated well, it facilitates what the author calls compassionate clarity. For example, her sister was a composer who would get creatively blocked. Instead of having a tense verbal conversation, the author would just close her eyes and send the mental image of an open window with sunlight streaming onto the piano keys.
A silent signal for a break, for fresh air.
Exactly. It loosened the emotional knot before a word was even spoken.
And in parenting, the sources talk about using picture talk.
Right. With a toddler who won't put on their shoes, instead of arguing, you project an image of playful sparks dancing on the shoelaces. You convey curiosity, not coercion. For teenagers, you don't scare them. You project the image of an inner lighthouse, sending the intention that they feel their own inner compass more strongly.
And finally, daily integration, weaving these micro practices into your routine.
Essential for maintenance. A red traffic light becomes a checkpoint where you send a quick mental smile to someone, visualizing calm while you stir your coffee. These little moments keep the mental field smooth so you're always ready.
We have to finish this section on the ethical horizon. This is maybe the most critical part of the whole practice.
It's absolutely non-negotiable. The number one rule is consent. It is the golden rule. The author tells this story from college where she did a quick, playful mental check-in with a friend in another dorm room without asking first.
And what happened?
She felt a sharp, immediate mental pushback, like a door slammed in my face. The friend later said she felt this sudden, weird intrusion, a feeling of her mental boundary being violated. It shows that consent has to be dynamic and ongoing.
Which highlights the need for privacy.
The metaphor used is perfect. An invitation to your living room is not an invitation to rummage in the attic. You have to honor those mental boundaries.
And the core danger is manipulation.
This is where the line gets really fine. The salesman wanting to nudge a client versus, say, a medical context. Using this to plant an idea for your own benefit is an explicit ethical breach. It has to be used solely to support the recipient's highest good.
So what do you do if you get an unsolicited impression? You're at the airport and you suddenly pick up on someone's panic.
You treat it like sensitive medical information you overheard, with total confidence and non-invasion. You don't focus on them or try to get more details. Instead, you just project a generalized feeling of calm into the ambient field. You address the feeling, not the person.
So we've covered the individual and the pair. Let's go wide now. Group telepathy. How do multiple minds connect without it just turning into chaos?
The group field, when it's managed right, actually functions as a powerful amplifier. The author's first experience with this near Santa Fe is amazing. 20 people were in silent practice, and 7 spontaneously chose the exact same symbol, a red kite.
And they even got the same detail.
Down to a broken tail streamer. That is so far beyond chance. It's not chaos. It's collective consciousness generating what the sources call overtones of awareness.
The choir analogy.
It's the perfect analogy. One voice is one voice. But a choir in harmony creates these new harmonic layers that no single person is singing. This happens with creative teams in what they call mind jam sessions.
Where they generate shared concepts spontaneously.
Right. A game development team was silently focused on a design problem, and this fully formed concept, an underwater level with fluorescent jellyfish as light sources, emerged simultaneously in several different notebooks. The collective mind just accesses information faster than language can.
And the practical applications can be incredibly high stakes.
Like the volunteer crisis team that accurately predicted open wildfire evacuation routes just by silently focusing on a mental map. To do this safely, you need structure. An affirmation like, I share only what serves the group's highest good, and strict time limits like 25 minutes max to avoid fatigue.
Let's tackle the big question of long distance. If the miles on a map are less relevant than emotional resonance, what is actually connecting the minds?
It's non-locality. We're back to the zero-point field. A strong, coherent intention from the sender excites that whole underlying medium, and a tuned-in receiver feels the signal instantly. The information transfer is instantaneous because the two minds are tapping into the same shared fabric of reality,
So the key variable isn't mileage, it's the quality of the signal and the reception.
which is where heart coherence comes in as the launching pad. The heart's magnetic field is measurably 5,000 times stronger than the brain's electrical field.
5,000 times. Why is it so much stronger?
The heart is a dense, highly organized network of cells. Its rhythmic output creates this powerful, stable electromagnetic field that acts as a coherent carrier wave for intention. The brain's electrical activity is much more chaotic and fragmented.
So before sending, you're taught to generate a feeling in the heart.
Yes. To recall a memory of profound gratitude, something so rich you can feel physical warmth in your chest. That coherent warmth becomes the stable platform you launch the thought from. It's far more effective than trying to launch from a busy, anxious brain.
Okay, finally, the time zone paradox. If the transfer is instant, why might a message I send at noon in New York not surface until hours later for someone asleep in London?
The transfer is instantaneous, but the surfacing of that information is not.
Oh, okay.
Intention operates outside of linear time. The message lands in the subconscious immediately, but it can only sneak through the side door when the conscious mind is most receptive.
Like during a dream or a quiet moment later in the day.
Exactly. The time lag doesn't mean it failed, it just means the information was waiting for the mental environment to hit that optimal theta state for translation.
Okay, so let's leave our listener with a final thought on the whole journey to mastery.
The journey is cyclical. It's not a straight lineup. You'll have periods of amazing success and frustrating failure. The authors just stress that consistency is way more important than intensity. 10 minutes of focused practice every day is vastly better than a huge session once a month.
And mastery isn't about more effort.
No. The essence of mastery is when it becomes as effortless and unobtrusive as breathing. It requires less strained effort and more precision. It's about cultivating that inner quiet so the pure signal can just rise up on its own.
That was an expansive and, I have to say, a really rigorous deep dive. We started by just questioning coincidence, and we've ended up with a verifiable, actionable blueprint for turning those random moments into a conscious, trainable skill. You now have a comprehensive toolkit for this.
It covers preparation, energy hygiene, advanced focus techniques.
And so importantly, the critical need for ethical practice.
And remember those foundational elements for your own practice. Disciplined breath control to manage your state, that razor-sharp focus to stabilize the signal, and just an unwavering adherence to the ethical code of consent and non-manipulation.
Telepathy is a potent force for good, but only when it's grounded in genuine respect for mental sovereignty.
Absolutely.
So here is our final provocative thought for you to take with you. The ultimate journey to mastery reveals a really simple, quiet truth separation is not as complete as it seems.
Start small. Practice your stillness. Recognize that the connection is already there.
It's like sitting by a river at dusk. You might find your focused thoughts can just drift outward like pollen on a breeze. And that recognition, that understanding that you are already connected by the shared quantum fabric, that's what allows for the quiet, profound conversations of the future, whether it's across the table or across the planet. Go practice and keep the channel open.
To get more information about the secret of telepathy, how to send and receive messages with your mind, click the below link to get the book